What's up guys? In today's video we're going to be modeling something really simple but just showing you the power of how you can use extremely simple objects like spheres and cylinders and create something amazing out of them. So let's get started. So the first thing I'd like to do is start with a UV sphere. And we're going to make this UV sphere, actually we can just press Control 1 to add an extra layer of resolution on it, or Control 2. And then I'm just going to go ahead and apply that sub D and then right click to smooth it out. So we're going to have just a really simple sphere here. Now what I want to do is I want to go into Box Cutter and I just want to cut off maybe like the front portion of the sphere here, like that. And if we go into Side View, we're going to have something that kind of looks like this. So the idea here is to keep building on top of the shape and just keep kind of clustering detail. This is a really easy exercise, especially if you're new to hard surface modeling. If this tutorial is a bit too difficult to follow along with, take our hard surface jumpstart course on our site. It's free. The whole idea with that is to get you up to speed with Blender and then come back to this tutorial. But if you're familiar with Blender, this tutorial should be pretty easy. So what I want to do at this point is I want to cut a hole into this little hole I already made, or this little cut I already made. So I'm just going to add in a cylinder, so Shift A, Mesh, and then Cylinder. We're going to make the vertex count 64, Q to sharpen it with hard ops, and then let's just rotate this 90 degrees over the y-axis. So do something like that. We'll kind of scale this in like that and then move it out. And then what we can do is shift click on the sphere and then press Q and then run a difference boolean like that. And I'm just going to take this face. I'm using machine tools to hop in and out of edit mode. It's a free add-on. You can download it. There's a link to that in the description as well. It's a free add-on, just kind of helps expedite the process of going in and out of object mode. Anyways, we're going to go into face mode. We're going to move this back a little bit, right until it's about flush with that face, and then we can press Q and then control click on mark. That's going to add a reverse bevel like that. And we can just kind of see how this looks. And the whole idea here is just keep stacking on detail into this little area. Now what I do want to do is take the face here in the back. So we'll go into wireframe mode, just grab that face and kind of move it back this way. I don't really need to cut that far in, that should be fine. And then what I want to do is apply this bevel. I'm happy with that, because if I try to add a loop cut with that bevel, it just goes crazy. So just to avoid that weird issue, we can apply the bevel like that. And now if I press Control R to add in a loop cut to this cutter, we can do that. And let's go ahead and click and then right click to lock it in. And then what I want to do is press Control B and just give it one segment. We're just going to make a nice little bevel like that. Now check this out. What I can do is extrude it with the E key, right click to cancel, and then Alt S to scale along the normals here to kind of get this cool little result like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take these two sets of edges, so Alt click, Alt Shift click right here, and then just Control B to make a smaller bevel right there. And if you're in object mode, you can press Shift 2 to hide your cutter collection. If your cutter collection is 3rd or 4th, then it would be like Shift 3 or Shift 4. In my case, I just press Shift 2 and that'll quickly hide the cutter collection. So now we have a pretty simple result here. Now, the number one question I probably get is, how do you get these highlights on the edge? We'll just turn on cavity here in the drop down menu. That's all you have to do. Looks a little bit nicer that way. So at this point, we have more or less a pretty simple looking model. So at this point, I want to figure out how exactly can I just keep adding detail to this area. And you can just think of a bunch of different ways. Usually what I'll do is kind of look at it from the front and think, what could I contribute to this to just make it look more, visually appealing? So what I think I'm going to do is, let's see, there's a few different solutions here. I'm just going to take a cube, just kind of rotate this cube and scale it down. And I'm going to place that cube right about here. Gonna move it back this way, right about there. We can even scale a little bit, so S and then X and then Control A to apply the scale. And then I'm just going to shift click on the sphere and then Q to run a difference boolean. We're going to kind of have this result going on. Looks okay. Just trying to see what else I could do here to it. Yeah, this should be fine. Then what I want to do is press Q to recall the cutter with ever scroll, like that. And basically what I'm going to do is just make like a nice little bevel here in the back. We can scroll up on that. Really simple, just to kind of make it look a little bit more visually appealing. And now what I want to do is, it's going to be a little bit tricky, but just try to follow along here. Notice how this edge, let me just show you, this edge right here is completely flat, but the edge behind it kind of flows in a circular formation, right? If I want to kind of mimic that, have a more circular edge right here, what I can use is something called, the technique's called cutting the cutter. So what we're going to do is add in a cylinder, just sharpen that cylinder and then rotate it. So at this point, check this out, what I could do is I could maybe scale it to about this point, and if I shift click on the cutter and then run a difference boolean on that cutter, it's going to remove it. Now it's removing the portion I don't want to remove. I want to remove the inverse of that, basically. I want to remove just this little back portion here. So instead what we could do with a cylinder is we could tab into face mode. We could delete the face here in the front and in the back, like that. So now we just have like this strip of faces. And what I could do is I could add a solidify modifier. So if I press Q, add modifier, and then solidify, we can kind of push it out this way to make it a manifold object, like that. And as long as it's covering that, we should be good. And now if I shift click on this cutter and run the difference boolean again, you're going to see it's actually removed that portion. And you know, I could scale this up, scale it down, just kind of get it as precise as I can. If it goes crazy like this and doesn't work, you simply need to change your boolean operation on this cutter here to exact. So we'll go to exact, and that should have fixed the issue. Maybe we need to do it on this one instead. Go to exact, and there we go. So yeah, sometimes you can change the solver from fast over to exact for geometry that is perfectly overlapped. So sometimes that'll happen. And now I'm just going to press Shift 2 to hide those cutters. And now we're going to have a cut that kind of flows very evenly with the rest of the mesh. So now what I can do is I can recall this cutter. And at this point, we could probably just apply the boolean. That's fine. And we have this really simple looking, cutter right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a radial array around this. So that way I can get one on this side and then one down here as well. So in HardOps, there's actually a built-in radial array function. Vanilla Blender does not have one. You'd have to do some trickery with empties and things. But with HardOps, you just press Q, Mesh Tools, and in this case, since the 3D cursor is in the center of the grid, I'm going to array around the 3D cursor. If your 3D cursor is over here somewhere, just press Shift S and then go to Cursor to World Origin. That'll go right in the center. So with the cutter selected, I can press Q, Mesh Tools, and then if I control click on Radial Array, this will go around the 3D cursor. So we'll control click on that. Now I'm going to press the X key to flip the axis. And in this case, I only want 3, so I'm just going to scroll down until I get about 3 of those. And then what I can do is just kind of rotate this. So you can just hold R or press R and then hold Control and just make these nice and consistent. So now we kind of have this shape going on. Pretty cool. And my friends, this is the power of really just following along with what the shape already looks like, flowing nicely with the shape. Because without us having removed that straight line we had here before, it wouldn't have looked as natural. It would have looked kind of like it was conflicting with the natural flow of the mesh, right? You want to keep things clean and consistent, and that's why you can use all these different tricks to kind of, appeal more to that visual design. So yeah, this looks really nice right now. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that right now, obviously, this boolean has not been applied. It's still, adjustable. I can always move this around wherever I want. But if we were to apply this boolean, let's go in here. We can't access it right now because we also need to apply this one. and then this one as well. But if we were to apply all of those, just keep in mind that some of this geometry might actually be overlapping. So you would probably need to clean that up if you apply the booleans, so kind of merge these together and things like that. But that's something we could do later on, or just you could do on your own. But oftentimes you might have this stray geometry that you have to just kind of get rid of, like we have here. You would just basically merge the vertices together and press Control X to dissolve out the vertices that you don't really need here. So Control X, and that's basically how you could get all of that merged together nicely. Otherwise, when you try to bevel it, the bevel is not going to exactly work as expected because all that geometry needs merged together. So just some food for thought there, but overall this is fine. I'm going to go ahead and undo that because I don't want to make any changes right now. I like to work as non-destructively as possible, meaning I like to keep my booleans live in the modifier stack. I don't like to apply them unless I absolutely have to. Just allows for a little bit more versatility in my workflow. So if I want to move this cut around, I can always just grab it, and then I can always, move it back if I want. So there's a lot more kind of versatility there with a non-destructive workflow. Now the next thing I want to do is get some little cuts kind of going through here. I think that would look pretty cool. So a few different solutions we could have. I'm going to show you probably the easiest one, kind of like the sneaky way to do it, but we could add in a cylinder. Let's give this a lot of vertices, like 400. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to sharpen it, gonna rotate it, just the usual stuff. And I'm going to scale this up right past this chamfer here. So just scale that up like that. And then what I want to do is tab into face mode and just take really any of these faces here. It doesn't matter. Just grab one, right? And then Control I to invert the selection, and then X to delete the faces. And now we're just going to have this one little strip of face here. It's really small. So what I could do is extrude it. So E to extrude. Let's make sure the face orientation is proper. In this case, it's not. So to fix that, we just select it and press Shift N. That'll fix it. And basically what I want to do here is run another radial array, because essentially what I want to get is this type of effect. Maybe not all the way through, scale that a bit. But basically I want to get a cut through this little area right here, but all the way around. So what I can do is you can do this before or after the Boolean cut. You could just run the Boolean first, no problem. But what you want to do is take that cutter, this one, and then we're just going to run another radial array. So Q, Mesh Tools, and then Control click on radial array. We'll press the X key to flip the axis. And in this case, we're just going to need to give it a heck of a lot of segments here. What you can do is just give it a few, click, and then you'll have access to the array modifier here in the modifiers panel. So you could just ramp this up to something like 200. Just depends how many of these you want. You could do like 300 if you want it like really thin. I think that looks pretty cool actually, a little bit trippy almost. But that's kind of up to you to play with. I think maybe like, I don't know, let's see what 200 looks like. I'm going to go with 260, give it a little bit more than I had before. I think that'll be good enough. But now we kind of have this cool looking little effect kind of cutting through the mesh here, which I really like. Now what I don't want is I don't want this effect to kind of go through where this cut is. Just a personal preference, I kind of want to have a little bit of empty space around this cut, because what that will do is bring more visual interest, because since the viewer is so used to looking at these little thin lines, it's very attention pulling. The moment the thin lines kind of stop, a lot of attention will be pulled there. So that's kind of the effect I want with these little cutouts. These cutouts are going to be very important in terms of visuals. So what I'm going to actually do is make sure this area doesn't have too many of those cuts. So once again, we can do this by cutting the cutter. So I'm just going to recall these cuts right here. We're just going to add in a cylinder. I'm going to go back to like 64 vertices. We don't need that many anymore. Going to sharpen it, rotate it, and basically what I want to do is just scale this down. And then I can just grab like these faces right here. Maybe these, like that. And then I can just press E to extrude, Going to extrude those all the way through. I'm going to scale this really far. And now check this out. If I shift click on these and then run a difference boolean, it's going to be removed from there. And if for some reason it's not, then let's go here and make sure, because right now this boolean should be below the array. So we need to just pull this boolean below that radial array, and now it's going to be fine. And if you want to tweak it at all you really have to do is take the cylinder, and you can just kind of like, scale it in or out or do whatever you want. But this looks pretty good to me. And now all we really have to do is get that same effect on the other two sides. So a few different solutions, but honestly, I'm just going to do the same exact thing I did to that other one just to make this work for a little bit quicker. And we'll select those, can extrude those through. And it doesn't matter how far you extrude those, just as long as they're actually going through that mesh. And extrude those down, and boom, there we go. Looks a little bit more visually appealing. Now, if we zoom in here a little bit, I'm not sure how well you can see it on YouTube, but there are some little shading artifacts right here. So what I'm going to do is go into like one of these matte caps. Notice how we have these really nasty shading breaks. We need to fix those, and really easy. All we really have to do in these cases is just, let me recall this cutter right here, since we haven't applied that boolean, this one. What I can do is just take this cutter, and we're just going to put in a loop cut right there. And what that's going to actually do is it's going to push the shading into the mesh. I just made a video on this recently on how to isolate shading, so check that out. But basically what we're doing, instead of having the shading pull all the way to here because of the n-gons on that curved surface, what we're doing is pushing that shading in with this loop cut. So nothing crazy, it's just going to help clean up that shading a little bit to where it's pretty much not noticeable at all. So at this point, the last thing I would like to do is show you a little bit about how to clean up any messy geometry that we have as a result of all these booleans. So what I'm going to actually do is apply this one, apply that boolean. We'll apply this one as well. We can apply these as well. And this one, since it's so dense, I don't really see a need to apply that right now. There's no benefit of really applying this. I just want to have access to the geometry on the rest of the mesh. So if I try to add a little bevel, so I press Q and then add a bevel, a lot of this mesh is going to kind of go crazy, and that's mainly because we have such like tight geometry right here. We can't really get away with a bevel. So instead what we could use is a bevel shader. So whenever you're rendering, if you want to have like a preview of a bevel, check this out. If you go into rendered mode, and with hard ops, you could just press Q and add in some lights, press the W key. But basically what I could do instead of adding in a real bevel is I could go here to the shader editor, and I could add in a, we need to add a material first, like that. What I could do is add in a bevel shader. So Shift A, input, add a bevel, and then connect this up to the normal slot. And you're going to see we have a nice little bevel around there. I'm going to change the radius to 0.01 and just give the material a little bit of a darker color so you can kind of see it. Maybe make it a little bit less rough. But you can kind of see the before and after. Here's the before. You might have to zoom in a little bit. A completely hard edge, and here's the after, a much softer edge, and the same is going to be applied on the inside. You can especially see it around here. Much nicer. So you can kind of see like around the edges, we don't really have any edge highlights. We don't have any light there. But the moment I connect up that bevel shader, we have a little bit of, edge highlight. So bevels are very powerful for that type of effect. Just wanted to show you that. Now, if we wanted to clean up the rest of the mesh here, really all we would need to do is just get rid of these duplicate vertices. So what I could do is first with machine tools, press the 3 key to get rid of any weird junk. And then next I could just get in here and start like merging, some of these vertices together. So we have like a lot of excess vertices here. And with machine tools, if you press the 1 key, that'll merge all of them at the last selected vertex. So in this case, that's all I'm really doing. And we have some right here. So now we have all of that area cleaned up very nicely. Then we can go over here to this side, basically do the same thing. I don't really need that edge, I guess. Gonna merge those, and then merge these. A little bit messy right here, but nothing we can't take care of. There we go. Nice and clean. And if we go down here, just gonna do the same thing to this last portion. Gonna merge those together. Going to merge these. And then these, and I don't really know why these vertices got here. It's just something weird that happened with whatever boolean we were using. So I'm not too worried about it. I'm just worried about fixing it. Then we can dissolve out that edge. Merge that one there. I could just dissolve out that one. And basically we're going to have a much cleaner result here. No weird or nasty geometry. It's all merged together exactly how we want it. So it's a little bit cleaner that way. So a pretty simple workflow, nothing complicated, and pretty straightforward process. The only tricky part is kind of wrapping your head around the cutting the cutter thing. But once you kind of understand how it works, how cutting the cutter works, it should make complete sense to you. So if this video is valuable to you and you learned some new workflows, drop me a thumbs up, really helps me out. And also, if you want some more customized and in-depth kind of training programs for hard surface modeling, we have a ton of courses available on our website. I'd really recommend checking out some of those because they go into way more depth and they'll get you way more results in a much quicker amount of time. So you can check out our courses over on our website, blenderbros.com. Once again, I hope this video was valuable to you and you learned a little bit, and I'll see you in the next one.